Good morning. Good morning. It is a thankful Thursday. I have so many things to be thankful about. Is it Wednesday? It's Wednesday. They love me enough around here to correct me when I'm wrong. I'm still thankful. Even if it is a wonderful Wednesday, I'm thankful that it's a wonderful Wednesday. And we're live. Hi, sister. I love you, Carrie Louise. Hi, Judy. I love you too. So glad you ladies have joined us this morning. There's Donna. Hi, Donna. We miss you here. Hi, Trey. Brother, I'm praying for your move. Believing. So excited for this next chapter for you, brother. Love your sing. Got your CD, by the way. Thank you. Thank you for sending me your CD. It's right here on the table with me. And I am excited about this morning's reading. Thankful Wednesday. Yes, Judy, thank you. I love everything about you too, sister. Thank you. May the 27th of 2020. We are on day 149. We're more than 1/3 of the way through the Bible. If you started out at the beginning of the year, you've made great progress. There's many of you that have never read that far all the way through the Bible before. And you know, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God. So we have to read it all to know Him. It's kind of like, you know, if I want to be your friend, but I want to leave out certain aspects of your personality that, no, I don't like that part of you, or I don't like that part of you, or no, you know, I'm just going to ignore that part, then you're not really going to know me. That's why we have to read the whole Bible. It changed so many things in me when I started reading from the front cover to the back cover over and over again. In fact, the number one thing I'll tell you I think that changed for me is my own confidence of my own relationship with Him, that I truly know Him. And probably more important than that is that He truly knows me. It starts with a knowledge and revelation that He knows me, and then the knowledge of I know Him. And you know where I'm at today because of that I don't think I would be at if it wasn't for the fact that I've read this 18 years through, all the way through the Bible. I wanted to know Him. I wanted to know Him. I wanted to know God's heart. And today, I'm no longer sand on the seashore that gets swept in with the tide and swept out to sea in the low tide. Say what you want to me about your beliefs, about what you think, about what you feel. We're all on our journey. I'm perfectly comfortable with letting you be on your journey where you're at, but you're not going to change me where I'm at. Man, that feels good. That feels good to not walk away from a conversation where somebody challenged me and to walk away doubting what I believe. Oh, man. So I'm still reading. How about you? I'm still reading. I want more and more confidence in what I believe and know that He's showing me about Himself. I want to know all of Him. I don't want to leave any part out, even the tough stuff in that Old Testament. No, bring it on, Lord. Bring it on, Lord. And then I have days like today. Today's reading, 2 Samuel chapter 12. John chapter 16. It's one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible. I just felt so intimate with Him this morning as I was reading. So intimate. Even His correcting David. You know, I thought about it, and I thought about the intimacy that David had, that as king, I can't imagine the distractions. I mean, I'm just little old me here in Skytook, Oklahoma, and I can have so many distractions, you can't even count them all. I can. David was a king, responsible for so many. He went to war on a regular basis. I can't even imagine the distractions that he had. And so David who pressed in hard enough that he didn't have to have a prophet come tell him what God said. He heard God's voice. He prayed. He said, Lord, do I take that hill? Do I go to war on that hill? Will I win if I battle? And he heard God say, yes, go up that hill. Yes, you'll win. Wow. At a time when we didn't have the advocate that's spoken of in John chapter 16, the time that in the New King James Version is called the Comforter, was not physically present the way it is today, because Jesus changed all that for us. I mean, I can't even imagine what it took, what kind of focus, what kind of stillness, what kind of determination it took to reach a place back then, Old Covenant, for David to get to where he could hear God's voice so easily, so readily, that he knew to pause before he even went into battle and ask God, do I do this or do I not do this? Do I go there? Do I not go there? And then here we see the king getting complacent, and he sinned horribly. The sins that David committed were worthy of death. They should have stoned him. But instead, God sent a prophet, Nathan, to speak to him. So I was talking about how David hears God's voice, but when he started allowing the distractions in, when he started allowing the thought processes to change, and he no longer thought about God more than he thought about sex, he no longer thought about God more than he thought about self-gratification, perhaps he no longer thought about God more than he thought about his position. Because remember, in yesterday's reading, part of the downfall is he stopped doing what kings do, and he didn't go with his men to war. He stayed home. He had a well-trained army. He trained them. He knew how they would respond. He knew what action they would take. To be that disciplined and that trained in that army, it's like they knew the back of his hand. They knew the front of his hand. They probably could count the number of imprints in his thumbprint. You have to. And yet, what was it that distracted David so that he allowed himself the self-gratification, the self-centeredness to sin with Bathsheba? And he didn't even see it. He had stopped hearing from God so much that it took Nathan to come and be bold. Because you didn't approach a king, because they make themselves a god. You didn't approach a king the way we can just. Even in our government today, I don't get to just walk up to the governor and say, "Hey, Governor Stitt." No, he's got bodyguards around him. You get my point. And yet Nathan came very boldly and pointed out his sin. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, I'm going to start reading verse 7. Then Nathan said to David, "You are that man. The Lord, the God of Israel says." Now listen. There's an intimacy in today's reading that I want you to get. "I anointed you king of Israel and saved you from the power of Saul." What does that say to me today? Elizabeth, I've anointed you with my spirit, and I've saved you from yourself so many times. Put your name in there. Montana, I've saved you from yourself so many times. I gave you your master's house and his wives and the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. I gave you all that you have, Elizabeth. Look around you, Elizabeth. Everything you see is a gift from me. And if that had not been enough, I would have given you much, much more. Wow. If every gift, every material possession you have, if every spiritual gift you have, if every, I don't know how to say it, but spiritual gift, if every little bit of intimacy, spiritual intimacy you have with the Father that you've got now doesn't compare, if it's not enough, I will give you much, much, much more. But David sinned. In the column of my Bible I wrote, 2020 already had abundance, yet how many blessings did he block? We already have abundance. We have more than enough. If I'm alive, I have more than enough. It means I've had enough food, I've had enough water, I've had enough shelter. If we're on one of the many forms of technology that you're hearing my voice, I'm telling you, you have abundance. And yet he's telling you how much more is there for you. And yet we doubt. And yet we fear. And yet we hold on to old regrets and old mindsets. And we're blocking our blessings. How much more is there? Oh, I'm telling you, this spoke profoundly to me. And then he goes on in verse 10 and tells David, from this time on, well, I want to make sure I'm saying the right words, because I want to get to the point of the forgiveness. Okay, so verse 10, from this time on, your family will live by the sword. So God, through Nathan the prophet, tells David that from this point forward, he'll live by the sword. Well, if you think about it, how many wars had he already been in? But he's telling him that not only him, but his family will live by the sword. And this is what I wrote in my column this morning. The sword is the reason David was not allowed to build God's temple. This is where it starts. Yes, there'd been many, many battles. There'd been lots of bloodshed up to this point. But the consequence of David's sin made what had happened so far seem like nothing. So moving on, verse 13, then David confessed to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. So confession is a huge part of this. A confession is a huge part of all of our life. You know, Jesus came and he's already paid the price for every sin I'll ever commit, I ever have committed, or I'm committing in the moment, if I was. But confession changes us. It changes us. It was important that David spoke out loud and said, I have sinned against the Lord. And then Nathan replied, yes, but the Lord has forgiven you, and you won't die for this sin. So he spared his life because he confessed. It saved his physical life because he confessed. Nevertheless, because you have shown utter contempt for the word of the Lord. So when we choose fear over faith, when we choose doubt over belief, when we choose self-gratification instead of God's way, when we choose self instead of sacrifice, when we choose our own life instead of sacrificing our life, the consequences are great. And we're blocking blessing after blessing after blessing. So I love that story. I still love the intimacy that David had with his father. I at a time when it just wasn't even possible. And then we go on, one of the consequences immediately starts, and he loses a child. So talk about blocking a blessing. He didn't have the blessing of that son growing up. So I want to move to John chapter 16. Oh my goodness. I'm I looked it up just to make sure, this John chapter 16, verse 1. I've talked about it leading up to this, and here it is in today's reading. I'm always excited when I get to speak about it. Sometimes it falls on a weekend. I know I've got a few things going on with my internet connection, so I'll pause occasionally and let the internet catch up. So I apologize. Don't know what's going on with the internet, but we'll go with it. John 16, verse 1. Our New Living Translation that we follow every day is a 3rd grade level. It's not meant to be a word-by-word, word-for-word translation. It conveys a feeling, a meaning. The King James, which is the most literal word-for-word translation we have available to us today, says it a little bit differently. I want to read it in today's reading, so if you're following along, you're reading the same translation that we use. I use it to keep it simple. We have brand new people that's never read the Bible before, and using the New Living Translation starts that process for them. And if you continue on, I'm telling you what'll happen. You'll get not bored, but you will get to where you feel a hunger for more if you continue on the New Living Translation, and you'll want to graduate to the more literal translations. It's part of the process. New Living Translation will not satisfy you that you're knowing the intimacy of Him. And there are changes to it that I don't even believe myself that it's intentional. I think it is the best they can do to get away from a word-for-word translation and bring it to a 3rd grade level to where we can just understand it at 4 o'clock in the morning when you're reading, or 6 o'clock in the morning, or at 11 o'clock after a long day at night. So anyway, John 16, verse 1, I, Jesus, have told you these things so you won't abandon your faith. Now remember, it's leading up to His crucifixion. He loves the disciples. We can't even comprehend the level of love that He has for them. And He knows how His death has the tendency, or would have the tendency, to affect them. But here's the deal. He knows how it will and is going to impact them. And He is choosing His words very carefully, and He is preparing them. He is loving them through His words, and He is helping them, and He is correcting them through His words right now, leading up to His death, His brutal death, by the way. So in the New Living Translation, it says, I, Jesus, have told you things so that you won't abandon your faith. Flip over to your King James Version. Read it in the King James, and it says, I have told you these things so that you will not be offended. He tells them not to be offended. I wish that had never changed that translation. It's powerful because He's telling them, you're going to want to rise up against them. And He's even telling them, it's not even so much that you're going to want to rise up and defend me when they come to kill me. It's that what they're getting ready to do to you because you're my followers, that you can't be offended. He's not just preparing them for His death. He's preparing them for what's going to happen to them. And if you know anything about the disciples, you understand that all but one of them died a martyr's death. They crucified one of them and crucified him upside down. They put one of them into a pot of boiling oil. They did horrible things to the disciples. And Jesus already knows that that's what's going to happen. And He's telling them and He's preparing them. If you walk in offense, what's getting ready to happen to you will be so much more. It's one of the reasons we get rid of our mindsets, our old mindsets of, you're going to do this to me, I'm going to be ticked off. You say this to me and I'm going to be ticked off. I have a right to be offended. I have a right. Do we really? We're dead to self, right? We're to die to self every day. We make ourselves a living sacrifice. And that's what He's preparing them for. I, Jesus, have told you these things so that you may not be offended. Do not take up an offense on my behalf, so that you'll be prepared when it comes against you, when the only thing you'll be guilty of is loving me, and they want to kill you, you won't even be offended. As they stoned Stephen to death, he prayed for his Father to forgive them. As they stoned him, do you know how slow that death had to be for Stephen? It's not in today's reading, but we've read about it in the other chapters. And yet, as he died, he prayed for their forgiveness. Oh, Lord, that's where I want to be. I want to be so rock solid in him that you don't have the ability to offend me. Got a ways to go. I'm closer than I used to be. Yes, I'm telling you these things now so that when they happen to you, you will remember my warning. That's verse number 4. But now I'm going away, verse 5 says. But now I'm going away, Jesus tells them, to the one who sent me, and not one of you is asking where I'm going. Instead, you grieve because of what I told you. Stop focusing on what you're focusing on. Things are not as they seem. That's what he's telling them. Don't focus on what's getting ready to happen to me. Instead, you grieve because of what I've told you. But in fact, it is best for you that I'm going away. Because if I don't, the advocate won't come. The comforter won't come if I don't leave. Stop focusing on my death and remember that I'm going to live. And no, not only am I going to live, see, he's telling them they can't touch me. They're not going to kill my spirit man. We don't die. They can't touch me. This virus can't touch me. I don't have to fear this virus. It's already written down in my Father's book the day that I'm going to die. I'm not to have any fear leading up to that day because I know that I don't die. This physical body's going to go away. That's what he's telling them. Because if I don't, the advocate won't come. If they hadn't killed Jesus's physical body, we wouldn't have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit that gives us our strength, that gives us our comfort, that does all the things he tells us about in here. When the Spirit of truth comes, verse 13, he will guide you into all truth. All truth. All truth. Let that set in. We live in a world of doubt. We've created doubt all around us that, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I don't know if I said the right thing. I don't know if I'm going to. I don't know if I should. I don't know if I... It says right here. It says right here that we live with a spirit of truth, and he will guide us into all truth. All truth. He guides us. We just have to have faith. You made a decision yesterday, and you woke up this morning wondering if it was the right one or not. He guides you into all truth. He'll guide you into all truth. He will not speak on his own, but will tell you what he has heard. We don't get to speak on our own anymore. We are to speak what the Holy Spirit guides us to speak. He will tell you about the future. He will tell you about the future. He's prepared you for this pandemic, whether you believe it or not. We think this rose up and surprised us. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Did I know a pandemic would be called COVID-19? No, I didn't. Do I think he was telling me? I do. Without a doubt, I believe he was. But I sat in my prayer closet back in February looking up saying those very words, Lord, you've been showing me how you tell me things in advance. That's one of the primary purposes of the Holy Spirit. How did I miss this, Lord? How come I didn't hear? And I looked around and I looked at all the verses and all the things I've written down for the past 2 years on little Post-it notes up in my prayer closet. And all of a sudden I had spiritual eyes to see that every step he walked me through was preparing me for such a time as this. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He tells us in advance. He told the disciples what was going to happen to them. He tells us, if they persecute me, how much more will they persecute you? You think the COVID-19 hasn't persecuted believers? didn't come in the form of persecution for us, to tempt us to be fearful, to tempt us to hide, to tempt us to give in to the panic around us? Oh yeah, that's a form of persecution. If they persecute me, how much more will they persecute you? But he prepares us and he guides us into all truth. And the Spirit will tell us things of the future. He will tell you about the future. Verse 14, he will bring me glory by telling you whatever he receives from me. All that belongs to the Father is mine. This is why I said the Spirit will tell you whatever he receives from me. Wow. It goes on to say, and I'll finish with this. Verse 22. So you have sorrow now, but I will see you again. Then you will rejoice, and no one can rob you of that joy. You can be right smack dab in the middle of a pandemic and have the joy of the Lord that is your strength. No one can rob you of your joy. At that time, you won't need to ask me for anything. You won't need to ask me for anything. I tell you the truth, you will ask the Father directly, and he will grant your request because you use my name. Do you understand the magnitude of that statement right there? Prior to Jesus Christ, we were not able to go directly to the Father. Prior to Jesus Christ, there had to be a priest or a prophet in between him and us at all times. Now we go directly to the Father. There are people out there that will only pray to Jesus. I get to pray directly to my Father. That's why I call him Father. He is my daddy God. He is my Papa. He is my Father. He is the great I am. He is Yahweh. He is all the different names. And besides that, after reading this from front cover to back cover, I now know anyway that when I pray to my Father, I'm praying to Jesus anyway. When I pray to my Father, I'm praying to the Holy Spirit. The three in one. I want to read this one more time. I will see you again, then you will rejoice, and no one can rob you of that joy. At that time, you won't need to ask me for anything. I tell you the truth, you will ask the Father directly, and he will grant your request because you use my name. You haven't done this before. Ask using my name, and you will receive, and you will have abundant joy. I will see you again. Have you seen him? Have you seen him? Have you used your spiritual eyes to know that he lives right inside of you? See, I've seen him. I know that I know I've seen him with my spiritual eyes. I don't have to wait for the second coming. I don't have to wait for the day my physical body dies away to be in heaven. I live heaven on earth right now today. Will I be joyous and will I celebrate with the second coming? Oh yeah. But I don't have to wait lacking for anything. I lack for nothing when I see. Capital S, capital E, capital E. I see. Do you see? Do you see? Do you see how intimate these scriptures are for us today? Yet I am not alone because the Father is with me, verse 32. Psalms 119, verse 72, your instructions are more valuable to me than millions in gold and silver. Verse 73, you made me, you created me. And that is more than enough.